functions, two key things that we'll be looking for about functions are the domain and range. So at the end of this video, you'll be able to find the domain and range of a function. All right, so let's just go ahead and first of all define what domain and range are. The domain is the collection of all input values, and a question we could ask ourselves is what numbers make sense for your inputs, and then the range is the collection of all output values, and a question we could ask ourselves is what numbers make sense for your outputs. And these are concepts that we'll use. Actually, sometimes if you'll look on my board, you'll see in my calculus class I even asked that question as well, just to a different level. Right, so this first example, it says to find the domain and range. This one is going to be a little bit different because this is a continuous function, so when we find the domain and range, it's going to be more of a set of values. So if we look at the domain, and input we can think of as x, and output we can think of as y. So when I'm looking at the x values, notice the x-axis is going along this way. So I basically want to look how far to the left does the graph go, and how far to the right does the graph go. And there's a little circle there. I'm just going to close that in to make it a little bit easier. So if I look at how far to the left does that graph go, it goes all the way over to -3. So -3 is as far to the left as that graph goes. And then I look how far to the right does that graph go. It goes to 1. All right, so our x values are somewhere between -3 and 1. And this is how I will write that domain when I do that. So that was the domain. And then let's look at the range. Well, the range is going to be the y values or the output values. So we basically are going to be looking for what is the lowest the graph goes to what is the highest the graph goes. So if I want to look at how far down does that graph go, the farthest down it goes is -4. And then I'm going to look how far up does that graph go. The farthest up that graph goes is 0. So my y value is always going to be somewhere between -4 and 0, and this is the way that we will denote that when we describe the domain and range, that it's bigger than -4 but it's less than 0. Okay, let's look at number 12. This is also asking us for the domain and the range. The easiest thing to do on this one is to actually list these points. So I'm just going to start at the furthest left point. That is the point 1, 3. The next one is the point 2, 1. The next point is the point 3, -1. The next one is 4, 2. The next point is 5, 0. And then the last one is 6, 6. Right? And then if we think about the domain is the collection of all input values or x's. So I'm just going to list all those x values. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for my range, it's just a collection of all the output or y values. So I'm just going to list all of the y values. So 3, 1, -1, 2, 0, and 6. So that's the domain and range. Notice the difference, because these were just points, we're actually going to list numbers. This was a more continuous graph, then we're going to list a range of values for the domain and range. So now hopefully you are able to find the domain and range of a function.